"Marry me, Miss Deborah," the injured boy whispered, his voice trembling with pain and something deeper, fear. "Please, will you marry me, Miss Deborah?" he asked again, more urgently this time. Deborah Johnson was just trying to survive another brutal shift in Brooklyn General's ER, dodging her abusive ex-boyfriend's threatening texts, when a small boy with a broken arm and bruised face was wheeled into her trauma bay. The child wouldn't let anyone touch him, thrashing, silent tears streaming down his cheeks, until Deborah knelt beside him, her calm voice cutting through his panic. As she gently examined his injuries, setting the fractured bone with practiced care, the boy suddenly gripped her hand with his good one. His wide, observant eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that didn't belong in someone so young. "If I marry you," she said softly, playing along to distract him from the pain, "will you promise to be brave for me?" His bruised face brightened slightly. "Yes," he said, barely audible but deadly serious. "And my papa. He can make the bad people never hurt you again. He's very powerful." Deborah smiled gently, brushing his tousled hair back. "Then it's a deal, brave one." She agreed without thinking, assuming it was nothing more than a frightened child seeking comfort in a scary moment, completely unaware that this single tender promise would pull her directly into the deadly, unforgiving world of Roberto Callisto, New York's most feared Italian mafia boss. Before we continue, do me a favor, if you're new here, like this video and subscribe for more engaging stories. It really helps the channel grow and your support means everything. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let's continue. Deborah Johnson's feet were screaming. 16 hours into her shift at Brooklyn General's ER, and the chaos showed no signs of slowing. A gunshot wound in Bay 3. Overdose in Bay 5. And somewhere in the maze of curtained beds, a child was crying. Her phone buzzed for the 15th time. "Jacob. Again. You can't hide forever. I know your shift ends at midnight." She deleted the text without reading the rest and shoved the phone deep into her scrubs pocket. 3 weeks since she'd changed the locks. 3 weeks of him circling her life like a shark. "Nurse Johnson." Dr. Alfred's voice cut through the noise. "Trauma Bay 1. Pediatric patient. Won't let anyone touch him." Deborah pushed through the double doors and stopped short. The boy couldn't have been more than 8, small and fragile on the oversized gurney. His left arm rested in a makeshift sling, his cheek bloomed purple with bruising, and his wide eyes tracked every movement in the room like a trapped animal. But it wasn't the injuries that made her pause. It was the 4 men in expensive black suits standing like sentinels in the hallway. Not cops. Not family. Something else entirely. "Hey there, brave one," Deborah said softly, approaching slowly. "I'm Miss Deborah. What's your name?" The boy's jaw clenched. Silent. She knelt beside the gurney until they were eye level. "I know you're scared. I know it hurts. But I promise, I'm only here to help." Something flickered in his eyes. His good hand unclenched slightly. "Can I see your arm? Just a quick look." He studied her face for a long moment, then gave the smallest nod. As Deborah gently examined the break, the boy's breathing began to slow. She hummed softly, an old lullaby her mother used to sing, while her practiced hands assessed the damage. Fractured ulna. Possible concussion. Defensive bruising on his forearms. This child had tried to protect himself from something. "You're doing so good," she murmured. "Almost done." "Miss Deborah." His voice was barely a whisper. "Yes, sweetheart." "Will you?" He swallowed hard. "Will you marry me?" Deborah blinked, caught completely off guard. "What?" "Marry me, Miss Deborah." His eyes filled with tears. "Please. Will you marry me?" Her heart cracked open. This traumatized little boy, asking for the one thing that meant safety in his world, a promise, a bond, protection. She brushed his tousled hair back gently. "If I marry you," she said softly, playing along to ease his fear, "will you promise to be brave while I fix your arm?" His bruised face brightened slightly. "Yes. And my papa." He glanced toward the hallway. "He can make the bad people never hurt you again. He's very powerful." Deborah smiled, her heart aching for him. "Then it's a deal, brave one." The boy's grip on her hand finally relaxed. She agreed without thinking, assuming it was nothing more than a frightened child seeking comfort, completely unaware that this single tender promise would pull her directly into the deadly world of Roberto Callisto, New York's most feared Italian mafia boss. The curtains swept open. A man stepped through, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Tall, commanding, dark hair slicked back, sharp features carved from stone. His black-tailored suit probably cost more than her monthly rent, and his eyes, cold, intense, unreadable, swept the room before landing on his son. Then they shifted to Deborah, and she felt the weight of a predator's full attention. "How is he?" The voice was low, controlled, laced with an accent that made every word sound like a threat. "Fractured arm," Deborah said, standing her ground despite her racing pulse. "Possible concussion. He'll need X-rays and—" "Papa." The boy's voice cut through. "This is Miss Deborah." She said yes. The man's gaze snapped back to her, something dangerous flickering in those dark eyes. "Yes to what, Figlio?" The boy smiled for the first time, small and hopeful. "She's going to marry me." The silence stretched like a knife blade. Roberto Callisto's eyes never left Deborah's face, assessing, calculating, reading every micro-expression. She forced herself not to look away, even as her instinct screamed danger. "Ilaeno," he said quietly, still watching her. "What did you promise Miss Deborah?" The boy, Ilaeno, shifted on the gurney. "That you'd protect her, Papa. From the bad people." Something unreadable crossed Roberto's face. He looked at his son, then back at Deborah, and she saw it clearly now. This was a man who missed nothing. "I see." He stepped closer, and Deborah caught the scent of expensive cologne and something darker underneath. Power. Violence. Carefully controlled. "And you agreed to this arrangement?" "He's a scared child," Deborah said evenly. "I comforted him. That's my job." "Your job." Roberto's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Tell me, Miss?" "Johnson. Deborah Johnson." "Miss Johnson, do you make promises you don't intend to keep often?" The question landed like a slap. Before she could respond, Dr. Alfred appeared with X-ray results, breaking the tension. Roberto stepped back, becoming all business as they discussed Eliano's treatment. Clean break, no surgery needed, cast, and observation. Through it all, Ilaeno kept his eyes on Deborah. 2 hours later, cast in place and discharge papers signed, Roberto appeared in the hallway where Deborah was updating charts. "Miss Johnson." A word. It wasn't a request. He led her to a private waiting area. The suited men followed at a distance, close enough to intervene, far enough to give the illusion of privacy. "My son hasn't spoken in 3 weeks, Roberto said without preamble. "Not since the incident." "The incident," Deborah repeated carefully. "A car bombing. Meant for me." His voice was matter-of-fact, discussing violence like weather. "Ilaeno was in the vehicle. His mother, my late wife, died in a similar attack 2 years ago. He's been difficult since." Deborah's chest tightened. "He has PTSD." "So the doctors say. Nightmares. Panic attacks. Selective mutism." Roberto's jaw clenched. "Until tonight. Until you." "Mr. Callisto." "He trusts you. I don't know why, but he does." Roberto pulled out a business card, held it between 2 fingers. "I'm prepared to make you an offer." "I'm not for sale." "Everyone is for sale, Miss Johnson. The only question is price." His eyes dropped to her worn scrubs, her scuffed shoes, the frayed strap of a bag. "You're what, 3 months behind on rent? Student loans from nursing school? Medical bills from, let me guess, a sick parent?" Deborah's blood turned to ice. "How do you?" "I know everything about everyone who enters my son's life." He stepped closer. "You work 70-hour weeks. You send money to a deadbeat cousin in Atlanta. You have an ex-boyfriend with a restraining order who violates it weekly. Jacob Turner. Unemployed. History of domestic violence." Her hands curled into fists. "You had me investigated? In 2 hours. I protect what's mine." Roberto's voice dropped dangerously low. "And my son wants you. So here's my offer. Move into my home. Care for Ilaeno. Help him heal. In return, I provide complete protection, generous salary, and all your debts, every single one, disappear. I'm not a nanny. I'm an ER nurse. Then keep your job. Part-time. But you live under my roof, under my protection. His eyes glittered. Before you refuse, consider this. How long until Jacob does more than send threatening texts? How long until he's waiting in your apartment instead of outside it? Deborah's phone buzzed in her pocket. She already knew who it was. 24 hours, Roberto said, pressing the card into her hand. His fingers were warm, steady, absolutely certain. Think about it. But know this. Iliano asked you to marry him because even at 8 years old, he recognizes safety when he sees it. The question is, are you smart enough to do the same? He walked away, his men falling into formation around him. Deborah looked down at the card. Heavy stock. Embossed lettering. A Brooklyn Heights address that probably cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime. Her phone buzzed again. Jacob, I'm waiting, baby. We need to talk. She closed her eyes. Then she made the call that would change everything. 24 hours after moving into Roberto's Brooklyn Heights mansion, Deborah stood in a guest suite larger than her entire apartment, wondering what fresh hell she'd walked into. The room was beautiful. Hardwood floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the East River, a bathroom with heated marble floors. Medical equipment sat ready in the corner. Monitors, emergency supplies, everything Iliano might need. Everything prepared before she'd even said yes. That should have been her first warning. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Iliano peeked around the door, still in his pajamas, cast cradled carefully against his chest. Miss Deborah? You're really here. Her heart melted. I'm really here, brave one. Did you sleep okay? He shook his head. Thunder scares me now. It sounds like... He stopped, his small body tensing. Like explosions. Like the bomb that killed his mother. Deborah knelt down, making herself smaller, less threatening. Do you know what I do when I'm scared? What? I sing. Want to hear. For the next hour, she sat with him, humming old lullabies while he drew pictures with crayons. A house, a woman with dark skin in blue scrubs, a man in black, and a small boy between them. A family that didn't exist. Iliano. Roberto's voice cut through the quiet. He stood in the doorway, dressed for business in another immaculate suit. Let Miss Johnson breathe. It's fine, Deborah said quickly. We are just bonding. I can see that. Something flickered across his face. Approval? Relief. It vanished too quickly to tell. There's something we need to discuss. Both of you. 10 minutes later, they sat in Roberto's study. Iliano occupied himself with a puzzle while Roberto poured himself 2 fingers of scotch. He didn't offer her one. My brother Giuliano is arriving tomorrow, he said without preamble. His protective of family interests. Meaning he'll have questions about you. About why you're here. Roberto swirled the amber liquid. The truth, that Iliano asked you to marry him, will make me look weak. Sentimental. In my world, sentiment is currency for your enemies. Deborah's stomach dropped. What are you saying? I'm saying we need a story. A believable one. His dark eyes met hers. As of today, we are engaged. Excuse me. Publicly engaged. It explains your presence, your access to my son, and sends a message to certain parties that you're under my protection. He said it like he was discussing a business merger, not a fake relationship. You can't just. People will ask questions. They'll want proof, background. Let me worry about that. Your job is simple. Don't contradict the narrative. And what narrative is that exactly? That we met through the hospital's charity program. That I was drawn to your compassion and dedication. That Iliano adores you, and I. He paused, choosing words carefully. I convinced you to take a chance on a complicated man. This is insane. This is survival. Roberto set down his glass with deliberate care. You want to know what happens if my enemies see you as hired help? As just another employee? They'll use you to get to me. They'll hurt you to hurt Iliano. But as my fiancé, as family, you become untouchable. Deborah's mind raced. For how long? Until Iliano is stable. Until the people who tried to kill him are dealt with. His voice went cold. Until I say otherwise. Before she could respond, her phone rang. Jacob. Again. Roberto's eyes tracked the movement as she silenced it. He's persistent. He's obsessive. Not anymore. Roberto stood, pulling his own phone out. He made a call, rapid Italian she couldn't follow, then hung up. As of right now, Jacob Turner has a choice. Leave New York or have a very unfortunate accident. My men are making that clear to him as we speak. Deborah shot to her feet. You can't just. I can. I did. He stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. You're under my protection now, Fidanzada. That means something in my world. It means anyone who touches you answers to me. His proximity was overwhelming. Heat and danger and something else she didn't want to name. Papa. Eliano's small voice broke the tension. Does this mean Miss Deborah is staying forever? Roberto's eyes never left Deborah's face. Yes, Figlio. Forever. Giuliano Callisto arrived like a storm front, expensive suit, cheaper smile, and eyes that catalogued everything they touched. Deborah watched from the second-floor landing as Roberto's younger brother swept into the foyer, bodyguards peeling away as the two men embraced. The affection looked genuine until Giuliano pulled back and his gaze landed on her. And who do we have here? My fiancé. Roberto's hand found the small of her back, possessive and warm. Deborah Johnson. Deborah, my brother Giuliano. Giuliano's smile never reached his eyes as he climbed the stairs. Fiancé. How sudden. He took her hand, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that lasted a beat too long. And what does a beautiful black woman see in my cold-hearted brother? Giuliano. Roberto's voice dropped to permafrost. What? I'm being welcoming. But his eyes swept over Deborah with undisguised calculation. Nurse, right? From the hospital? Must be quite the fairy tale, from bedpans to this. He gestured at the mansion's opulence. I see patients, not bedpans, Deborah said evenly. And I'm here for Eliano. Ah yes, the boy. Giuliano's expression softened fractionally. How is my nephew? Healing. No thanks to whoever planted that bomb. The temperature in the room plummeted. Giuliano's smile vanished. Careful, Bella. You've been here what, 2 days? Don't pretend to understand our world. I understand trauma. I understand a child who watched his mother die and now can't sleep through thunder. That's enough. For a long moment, Giuliano just stared. Then he laughed, sharp and humorless. She's got spine, Roberto. I'll give you that. But spine doesn't stop bullets. Neither does running your mouth, Roberto said quietly. We need to talk. Alone. The brothers disappeared into Roberto's study. Deborah exhaled slowly, her heart hammering. She found Eliano in his room, building a castle from blocks with fierce concentration. He looked up when she entered. Uncle Giuliano's here. I know, sweetheart. Do you want to see him? Eliano's hand stilled. He gets loud. Mama used to cry when he visited. Deborah sat beside him on the carpet. Your mama. She said Uncle Giuliano wanted Papa to be meaner, to hurt more people. His voice dropped to a whisper. Do you think that's why the bad people hurt us? Because Papa wasn't mean enough. Christ. This child was 8 years old and already drowning in guilt that wasn't his to carry. Listen to me. Deborah tilted his chin up gently. What happened to you and your mama? That was not your fault. Not your papa's fault. The only people responsible are the ones who planted that bomb. You understand. Eliano nodded, but his eyes were too old, too knowing. Raised voices erupted from downstairs, Italian, rapid, and sharp. Something crashed. Eliano flinched violently, his breathing accelerating. Deborah recognized the signs immediately. Flashback, panic attack incoming. Hey, hey. Look at me, brave one. Look right here. She pressed his hand to her chest, letting him feel her steady heartbeat. Match my breathing. In. And out. That's it. You're safe. You're right here with me. The door burst open. Roberto stood there, jaw clenched, a fresh cut on his knuckles. His eyes went straight to Eliano, then Deborah. What happened? Flashback. He's okay now. But her voice was steel. Maybe keep the family drama at a lower volume. Roberto's expression was unreadable. He crossed to them, kneeling beside his son. Iliano. Mi dispiace. I am sorry. Iliano threw his good arm around Roberto's neck. Don't let Uncle Giuliano take Miss Deborah away. Roberto's eyes met Deborah's over the boy's head, dark, dangerous, and utterly certain. No one takes her anywhere. Ever. Later that night, after Iliano finally slept, Deborah found Roberto on the rooftop terrace, staring at the city lights. Your brother hates me, she said without preamble. My brother hates that he can't control me. Roberto didn't turn around. He thinks you're a weakness. A liability. Am I? Now he turned, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. You're the first thing in 2 years that's made my son smile. You're the only person who's walked into this house and demanded I be better instead of worse. He stepped closer. So yes, Deborah. You're dangerous as hell. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his face went stone cold. What? Giuliano just called a family meeting. Tomorrow night. Roberto's voice was ice. He's challenging my leadership. And he's using you as evidence that I've gone soft. The family meeting was set for midnight, because apparently, the Mafia had a flair for the dramatic. Deborah spent the day with Iliano, trying to keep him distracted while armed men moved through the mansion like shadows, preparing for something she couldn't quite name. The air thrummed with violence waiting to happen. Miss Deborah. Iliano looked up from his coloring book. Are you scared? A little, she admitted, because lying to this child felt wrong. Are you? Papa won't let anything bad happen. He promised. But his hand trembled as he reached for another crayon. At 6 p.m., Roberto found her in the library. He wore all black, not a business suit, something harder, tactical. A gun sat holster visible at his hip. You need to stay in your room tonight. Lock the door. Don't come out until I tell you. What's going to happen? Politics. The word was bitter on his tongue. Giuliano's going to make his case that I'm unfit to lead. That my attachment to you proves I've lost focus. And if they agree with him? Roberto's smile was razor-sharp. Then I remind them why they fear me in the first place. He turned to leave, but Deborah caught his arm. Don't do anything you can't come back from. Not for me. Something softened in his eyes. You don't understand what you are yet, do you? What am I? He touched her face, brief, achingly gentle. Everything. Then he was gone. Deborah tried to follow orders. She really did. But at 11:47 p.m., her phone rang. Unknown number. Miss Johnson. A woman's voice, crisp and professional. This is Dr. Marcello from Brooklyn General. There's been an incident involving Jacob Turner. He's named you as next of kin. I'm not his anything. He's in critical condition. Asking for you. Says he has information about threats to your safety. Deborah's blood ran cold. What kind of threats? He wouldn't say. Only that he needs to see you tonight. Room 847. The call disconnected. It was a trap. Had to be. But what if it wasn't? What if Jacob actually knew something? About Giuliano, about whoever wanted Roberto dead, about the bomb that had nearly killed Iliano. She looked at her locked door, at the clock ticking toward midnight. Then she grabbed her coat. The hospital was chaos. Friday night in Brooklyn, every bay full of gunshots and overdoses and trauma. Deborah moved through it like a ghost, knowing the hallways, avoiding security cameras from muscle memory. Room 847 was in the surgical wing. Quiet. Too quiet. Jacob lay in the bed, his face a mess of bruises. He smiled when he saw her, that familiar, dangerous smile. There's my girl. I'm not your girl. What do you want, Jacob? Come closer. They might be listening. Every instinct screamed run. But she stepped forward, just close enough. Jacob's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist with crushing strength. Not injured. Not weak. Never had been. Gotcha. The door opened behind her. Giuliano stepped through, flanked by 2 men she didn't recognize. Miss Johnson. So glad you could join us. Deborah tried to pull away, But Jacob held firm. "Let me go." "Not yet, baby." Jacob's voice was poison-sweet. "See, Giuliano here made me an interesting offer. Help him prove Roberto's gone soft, and all my legal troubles disappear. Assault charges, restraining order violations, poof. Gone. You're insane. Both of you." Giuliano smiled. "I'm practical. My brother's protecting you because of some misguided attachment. Because that child has him wrapped around his finger. But when the family sees how easily you were taken, how vulnerable you make him." He pulled out his phone, started recording. "They'll see what I see. A liability. A weakness. A woman who'll get him killed. Roberto will destroy you for this. Roberto will negotiate. He always does. That's his problem. He'll choose you over the family, and that's when they'll see." Giuliano stepped closer. "He's not the man our father was. He's soft. Sentimental. Weak." Jacob yanked her closer. "Just like you, sweetheart. All that talk about being strong, independent, but you came running the second I called. Pathetic." Deborah's mind raced. She was in scrubs, no weapons, no phone, she'd left it at the mansion, no way to call for help. But she was an ER nurse. She knew anatomy, knew pressure points, knew exactly where to strike to make a man let go. She stomped down hard on Jacob's instep, drove her elbow into his throat as his grip loosened, and ran. She made it 3 steps before Giuliano's men grabbed her. Feisty. Giuliano's phone was still recording. This is going to break him beautifully. A gunshot cracked through the hallway. Everyone froze. Then the door exploded inward, and Roberto stepped through like an avenging angel, gun raised, eyes dead, flanked by 6 men in tactical gear. "Brother." His voice was conversational, terrifying. "I believe you have something of mine." The surgical wing was silent except for the sound of safeties clicking off 6 different weapons. Roberto's eyes never wavered from Giuliano. "Let her go. Now." "Or what?" Giuliano kept his phone recording, kept Deborah positioned between them like a shield. "You'll shoot your own brother in front of witnesses? In a public hospital? That'll look great for the family." "I don't need to shoot you." Roberto's voice was ice. "I just need to watch." He jerked his chin. 2 of his men moved with terrifying precision. One disarmed Giuliano's bodyguards before they could blink. The other yanked Jacob from the hospital bed and slammed him against the wall. Jacob screamed. The sound cut off abruptly when Roberto's man pressed a forearm across his throat. "You put your hands on her," Roberto said quietly, still not looking away from Giuliano. "After I specifically told you to leave New York. After I gave you a chance."
"Roberto," Jacob choked.
"I'm not talking to you." Roberto finally looked at the man who'd tormented Deborah for months, and whatever Jacob saw in his eyes made him go pale. "You're already dead. You just don't know it yet." Deborah felt Giuliano's grip tighten on her arm. "You're proving my point, Fratello. Look at you, ready to start a war over a woman you've known for 3 days. Father would be ashamed." "Father," Roberto said softly, "would have slit your throat the moment you conspired against family. I'm being merciful." "This isn't mercy. This is weakness." Giuliano's voice rose. "She's made you soft, made you." "Made me what?" Roberto took a step forward, and something in his expression made even his own men look nervous. "Made me remember what I'm actually protecting. Made me realize that power without purpose is just violence wearing an expensive suit." He holstered his gun, raised his hands, open and empty. "You want to challenge me? Fine. But we do it the old way. You and me.
"No guns."
No men. Just brothers." Giuliano hesitated, his bravado flickering. "Unless you're the one who's gone soft," Roberto continued, "hiding behind kidnapped women and drugged-up ex-boyfriends. Very brave, Giuliano. Father would be so proud." The taunt landed. Giuliano shoved Deborah away. She stumbled, caught herself against the wall, and charged. What happened next took less than 10 seconds. Giuliano swung wild, all rage and no technique. Roberto sidestepped, drove a fist into his brother's kidney, then swept his legs. Giuliano went down hard. Roberto followed him down, knee on his chest, hand around his throat. I have given you everything, Roberto said, voice eerily calm. Money, power, respect you didn't earn. And you repay me by threatening my son's caretaker? By working with the man who terrorized her? She's nothing, Giuliano gasped. She's mine. Roberto's hand tightened. And you will never touch what's mine again. Understand? Giuliano's face was turning purple.
Roberto.
Deborah's voice cut through the violence. Stop. He didn't move. Please. Eliano's already lost his mother. Don't make him lose his uncle too. For a long moment, Roberto didn't react. Then slowly, deliberately, he released Giuliano and stood. You have 24 hours to leave New York, he said, straightening his jacket. If you're still here at sunrise, I'll finish this conversation. Permanently. Giuliano coughed, rolled onto his side. The family won't stand for this. The family, Roberto interrupted, already voted. While you were busy playing kidnapper, I was in the meeting you called. Showed them your financial records, the money you've been skimming, the deals you've been making with the Volkovs behind my back. He smiled, cold and sharp. They asked me to show you mercy. So I am. 24 hours. He turned to Deborah, and the coldness in his eyes melted into something else entirely. Are you hurt? She shook her head, not trusting her voice. Roberto crossed to Jacob, who was still pinned against the wall. And you? Please, man, I didn't. Roberto pulled out his gun and shot him in the kneecap. Jacob's scream echoed through the hallway. Deborah flinched, but didn't look away. That's for every bruise you gave her, Roberto said calmly. The next time you even think her name, I'll take the other knee. Then we'll work our way up. Understand? Jacob sobbed, nodded frantically. Roberto holstered his weapon and extended a hand to Deborah. Let's go home. She stared at his hand, the same hand that had just dispensed brutal violence, now offered gentle and steady. She took it. In the car, Brooklyn lights sliding past the windows, Deborah finally spoke. You shot him. I did. In a hospital. Security footage is already erased. Witnesses paid off. Jacob will tell police it was a mugging gone wrong, or he'll lose more than his kneecap. Roberto's voice was matter-of-fact. He won't bother you again. And your brother will be in Sicily by dawn if he's smart. Roberto's jaw clenched. If not, he'll be in the East River. Deborah should have been horrified. Should have demanded he take her back to her old apartment, her old life, away from this world of violence and vendettas. Instead, she squeezed his hand. Thank you. For coming for me. Roberto looked at her then, really looked, and something raw and unguarded crossed his face. Always, he said. I will always come for you. 2 months later, the world was quieter. Giuliano was in Sicily, stripped of power and nursing his humiliation. Jacob had left New York the moment his kneecap healed enough to travel. The Volkovs, the rival family who'd been backing Giuliano's coup, had mysteriously backed off after 3 of their warehouses burned in a single night. Roberto never confirmed his involvement. He didn't have to. Deborah had settled into a rhythm she'd never expected. Mornings with Eliano, afternoons at the hospital, part-time, as promised, evenings with a family that was becoming real in ways that terrified her. Eliano was talking now. Full sentences, bright observations, questions that came faster than she could answer. The nightmares had faded to once or twice a week instead of every night. He'd started calling her Deborah instead of Miss Deborah. Progress. Healing. But there was still distance between her and Roberto, a careful space they both maintained, like dancers afraid of stepping too close. Until tonight. She found him on the rooftop terrace, the same place he'd stood 2 months ago before everything exploded. He'd loosened his tie, rolled up his sleeves, and looked almost peaceful. Eliano asleep? He asked without turning. Finally. He made me read 3 chapters instead of 1. She joined him at the railing, looking out over Brooklyn. He's getting manipulative. Wonder where he learned that. Roberto's mouth quirked. Can't imagine. They stood in comfortable silence. The city hummed below them, sirens and traffic and a million lives intersecting. I've been thinking, Roberto said quietly, about what happens next. Deborah's stomach tightened. Next. The engagement. It served its purpose, protected you, stabilized Eliano, sent a message to my enemies. He finally looked at her. You've fulfilled your end of our arrangement. More than fulfilled it. If you want to leave, return to your life, I'll make sure you're protected. Set up. Whatever you need. The offer hung between them like a blade. Is that what you want? Deborah asked carefully. For me to leave? What I want, Roberto said, voice rough. Stop being relevant the moment Eliano asked you to marry him. He turned to face her fully. You came into our lives out of kindness. Because a frightened child asked and you couldn't say no. You don't owe us anything more. That's not an answer. The answer is complicated. Try me.
Roberto exhaled slowly.
I want you to stay. Not because of the arrangement. Not because Eliano needs you, though he does. I want you to stay because when you're not here, this house feels empty. Because you make me want to be the man you see instead of the monster I actually am. Deborah's heart was hammering.
Roberto.
But wanting isn't enough. You've seen what my world looks like. The violence. The constant threat. You had to watch me shoot a man in a hospital hallway. You were kidnapped because of me. His hands clenched on the railing. You deserve better than this. Than me. For a long moment, Deborah didn't speak. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out the fake engagement ring he'd given her 2 months ago. A simple platinum band with a modest diamond. Roberto's face went carefully blank. She slipped it off her finger. You're right, she said softly. I do deserve better than a fake engagement. Than a business arrangement. Than distance and careful spaces and pretending we don't feel what we feel. She set the ring on the railing between them. So here's my counteroffer, Roberto Callisto. She met his eyes, unflinching. No more fake. No more arrangement. You want me to stay? Then ask me for real. Not for Eliano. Not for protection. For you. For us. Roberto stared at her like she'd just pulled a weapon he didn't know she had. Deborah. I love you. The words came out steady, certain. I love your son. I love the man you are when you think no one's watching. The father who sits by Eliano's bed during nightmares, the brother who gave Giuliano 24 hours instead of a bullet. I even love the dangerous parts, the parts that scare me, because they're part of the whole. She stepped closer, close enough to feel his heat. But I won't stay for half measures. I won't be the woman you keep at arm's length to protect. So decide. Right now. Do you want me, or do you want me safe and gone? Roberto's control, that legendary, unshakable control, cracked. He pulled her against him, one hand cupping her face, the other wrapping around her waist. I want you. God help me, I want you more than my next breath. Then say it. I love you, Deborah Johnson. I've loved you since you chose to save my son when you could have walked away. Their mouths met, desperate, claiming, everything they'd both been holding back for 2 months. His hand tangled in her hair. She gripped his shirt hard enough to wrinkle the expensive fabric. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Roberto pressed his forehead to hers. Marry me, he whispered. Not fake. Not for Eliano. Marry me because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Deborah laughed, tears streaming down her face. You're supposed to have a ring for this. I have something better. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a necklace, 3 pendants on a delicate platinum chain. Ruby, sapphire, onyx, Eliano's birthstone. Yours, Mine. Roberto's voice was rough. A family. Real and forever. Deborah couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. She just nodded. Roberto fastened the necklace around her neck, his fingers gentle. Then he picked up the engagement ring from the railing. May I? She held out her hand. He slipped it back on, but this time, it meant everything. St. Patrick's Cathedral was locked down tighter than Fort Knox. Deborah stood in the bride's chamber, staring at her reflection and wondering how she'd gotten here. From hiding behind hospital curtains to wearing a custom wedding gown that probably cost more than a car. The dress was perfect. White silk with a kente cloth sash in gold and green. Italian lace veil that had belonged to Roberto's grandmother. A blend of worlds, just like them. You look beautiful, Bella. Maria, Roberto's cousin, and the only family member who'd welcomed Deborah without reservation, adjusted her veil. My cousin is a lucky man. I'm the lucky one, Deborah said softly. 6 months ago, I was drowning. Now you're family. Maria squeezed her hand. And we protect family. A knock at the door. One of Roberto's men, she'd learned to tell them apart now, this one was Vincent, poked his head in. Miss Johnson. There's a situation. Deborah's stomach dropped. What kind of situation? The kind where you should probably talk to the groom. Now. She found Roberto in the vestry, surrounded by his inner circle. He looked devastating in his black tuxedo, the Callisto family crest embroidered on his cufflinks. He also looked murderous. What happened? Deborah demanded. Roberto's jaw was granite. The Volkovs sent a wedding gift. He nodded to the table. A white box sat there, innocuous except for the red ribbon, the color of blood in their world, she'd learned. Inside was a photograph. Iliano. Playing in the mansion's garden. Taken yesterday. The message was clear. We can reach him anytime we want. Deborah's blood turned to ice. Where is he? Safe. Triple security. Roberto's voice was controlled, but his hands were clenched. But they've made their position clear. They see today as the perfect opportunity. All my attention on the wedding, guards spread thin. So we cancel, Deborah said immediately. We go home, protect Iliano.
No.
Roberto caught her hands. That's exactly what they want. To prove I'm distracted. Weakened. That you're a liability they can exploit. I don't care what they think. Eliano's safety is guaranteed. A new voice cut in. Agent Morrison stepped from the shadows, the FBI agent who'd been circling their world for months. Because as of 20 minutes ago, the Volkov leadership is in federal custody. Deborah blinked. What? Morrison smiled thinly. Turns out your fiancé has been cooperating with our investigation, providing intelligence on Volkov operations in exchange for immunity on certain, unrelated matters. Roberto's expression was unreadable. Insurance policy. I wasn't going to let them ruin today. You worked with the FBI. Deborah stared at him. You hate the FBI. I hate threats to my family more. Roberto's eyes were intense. So yes, I made a deal. The Volkovs go down for trafficking and racketeering. In exchange, certain financial irregularities in my legitimate businesses get overlooked. Everyone wins. Morrison cleared his throat. Not everyone, but the important people. He extended his hand to Roberto. Congratulations. Try to stay out of trouble.
No promises.
After Morrison left, Deborah turned to Roberto. You've been planning this for months. Since the night they threatened you. He cupped her face. I told you, I protect what's mine. By any means necessary. Even making deals with people you hate. Especially then. He kissed her softly. You and Iliano are my line, Deborah. Everything else is negotiable. An hour later, Deborah walked down the aisle on the arm of Dr. Alfred, the closest thing she had to family from her old life. Iliano stood beside his father as ring bearer, wearing a miniature tuxedo and the most serious expression an 8-year-old could manage. When he saw her, his face split into a grin. Roberto's expression was harder to read, until she got close enough to see his eyes. Then she saw everything. Love, wonder, possession, promise. The ceremony was a blend of traditions. Catholic prayers in Latin and English. A hand-fasting ritual with cord in Italian and Ghanaian colors. Vows that made half the congregation cry. I, Roberto, take you, Deborah. His voice was steady, certain.
Tu sei la mia luce nell'oscurità.
You are my light in darkness. My redemption. My home. Deborah's turn. I, Deborah, take you, Roberto. You showed me that strength and tenderness can exist in one heart. That family isn't just blood, it's choice. It's love. It's showing up, even when it's dangerous. When the priest said, You may kiss your bride, Iliano shouted finally, before either of them could move. The cathedral erupted in laughter. Roberto kissed her anyway, deep and claiming and full of promise. At the reception in the mansion ballroom, Deborah danced with her husband while Eliano spun in circles nearby, high on cake and joy. Happy? Roberto murmured against her ear. Terrified. Elated. Confused. How this is my life. She pulled back to look at him. But yes. Impossibly happy. Good. He spun her, pulled her close. Because you're stuck with us now. No returns, no exchanges. Wouldn't dream of it. Eliano crashed into them, wrapping his arms around both their legs. Group hug. They folded around him, this child who'd brought them together with an impossible request in an ER bay. Mama. Eliano looked up at Deborah with wide eyes. Can I really call you that now? For real? Deborah's throat closed. She knelt down, heedless of her expensive dress. You've been my son in here, she tapped his chest, right over his heart, since the day you asked me to marry you. Now it's just official. Eliano threw his arms around her neck. Over his head, Deborah met Roberto's eyes. Saw the same overwhelming emotion she felt. They'd built something impossible. Something real. A family forged not in blood, but in choice. In sacrifice. In love strong enough to survive violence and vendetta. And it was only the beginning. 6 months later, Deborah stood in the pediatric trauma wing of Brooklyn General. Her wing now, funded by a generous anonymous donation that everyone knew came from the Callisto family. The plaque read, in memory of Vera Callisto. For the children who need healing. Roberto's late wife. Eliano's mother. The woman whose death had nearly destroyed them both. It had been Deborah's idea, and Roberto had held her for a full minute without speaking when she'd proposed it. Then he'd written the check. Dr. Johnson. A resident poked her head in. Your son's here. Deborah smiled. She'd finally finished her nurse practitioner degree. Online classes squeezed between family dinners and dodging the occasional FBI investigation. Dr. Johnson still sounded surreal. Eliano bounced into her office. No cast now, no bruises, just a healthy 9-year-old with too much energy and his father's sharp eyes. Mama. Papa said I could show you. He thrust a paper at her, a drawing of 3 figures, plus a smaller 4th one. Who's this? Deborah pointed to the new addition. My baby sister. Or brother. I don't care which. He grinned. Papa said you're probably going to tell him tonight, but I already know. You've been tired and you smell different and you stopped drinking coffee. Deborah's hand went unconsciously to her still flat stomach. She'd only confirmed it yesterday. Had planned to tell Roberto tonight over dinner. You're too smart for your own good, you know that. Papa says I get it from you. Eliano climbed into her lap, still small enough for that, though not for much longer. Are you happy about the baby? Terrified, she admitted. But yes. So happy. Good. Me too. He paused. Will you still have time for me? When the baby comes. Deborah's heart cracked. Always. You were my first son. My brave knight. Nothing changes that. Promise. Promise. That evening, the family gathered on the rooftop terrace, their place now, where all the important conversations happened. Eliano had been sworn to secrecy but was vibrating with the effort of keeping quiet. Roberto noticed immediately. What did you do? He looked between them suspiciously. Why do you assume I did something? Eliano asked innocently. Because you have my genetics. Deborah laughed, then took Roberto's hand. Eliano didn't do anything. But I have news. She watched his face carefully as understanding dawned. His eyes dropped to where her hand rested on her stomach, then back to her face. You're pregnant. About 8 weeks. For a long moment, Roberto didn't move. Then he pulled her into his arms so tightly she could barely breathe. Say something, she whispered against his chest. I don't have words. His voice was rough. After Vera, I never thought, I didn't dare hope. Well, start hoping. Because in 7 months, this family gets even more complicated. Eliano cheered. I'm going to be the best big brother ever. Roberto laughed, a sound that came easier these days, more frequent. He pulled back enough to cup Deborah's face. Are you okay? Feeling all right? Do you need to sit down? Should you even be working? Roberto. She covered his hands with hers. I'm a medical professional. I've got this. I know. He pressed his forehead to hers. You've given me everything. My son back. A reason to be better. And now this. We gave each other everything, she corrected. That's how family works. Later, after Eliano was asleep, Deborah and Roberto stood at the railing, looking out over Brooklyn. The city that had nearly broken her. The city where she'd found herself. I've been thinking, Roberto said quietly, about going fully legitimate. Selling off the last of the questionable businesses. Building something clean for our children. Our children. Deborah tested the words. Plural. I like that. I'm serious. The Volkovs are gone. Giuliano's never coming back. My territory is stable. This is the time, if I'm ever going to do it. What brought this on? You did. He turned to face her. I look at you, at what you've built, the lives you save, the good you do, and I want that. Not the power. Not the fear. Just legacy worth leaving. Deborah felt tears prick her eyes. Who are you and what have you done with the cold Mafia don I met in the ER? You killed him, Roberto said simply. The night you agreed to marry Eliano. You killed the man who thought power was everything and showed me what actually matters. He pulled the 3-pendant necklace from beneath her shirt. Ruby, sapphire, onyx. Worn every day for 6 months. We'll need to add another stone, he murmured. We will. She kissed him softly. And maybe another after that. And another. How many children are we having? Let's start with 2 and see how we survive. Roberto laughed, then sobered. I love you, Deborah Callisto. More than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. I love you too. She rested her head on his shoulder. My dangerous man with the gentle heart. They stood together as Brooklyn hummed below, a nurse who'd wanted only to survive and a mafia boss who'd forgotten how to live, both saved by a child's impossible request. Marry me. Such a simple question. Such a complicated answer. But they'd figured it out together. Marriage wasn't a transaction or a protection deal or a political arrangement. It was choosing each other, every single day. In danger and peace. In violence and healing. In the quiet moments and the chaos. It was family, messy, fierce, unbreakable. It was forever. 1 year later, Eliano held his baby sister, Sofia Vera Callisto, with the careful concentration of a 10-year-old trying not to drop something precious. She's so small, he whispered. You were this small once, Deborah said, watching from the hospital bed. Roberto stood beside his son, one hand on Eliano's shoulder, the other holding Deborah's. The Callisto family, complete. Can I tell her the story? Eliano asked. About how you and Papa met. Which version? Roberto asked dryly. The one where I intimidated your mother in an ER? Or the one where you proposed on her behalf? The real one. Eliano looked at his baby sister. Once upon a time, there was a brave nurse and a scary papa and a little boy who just wanted everyone to be safe. So the little boy asked the nurse to marry his papa, and she said yes, and they all lived happily ever after. That's not quite how it happened, Deborah said softly. Sure it is. Eliano grinned. The rest is just details. Roberto kissed Deborah's temple. Smart kid. Wonder where he gets it. They looked at their family, past and present and future, all tangled together in ways that defied logic and exceeded hope. A proposal in an ER. A promise made in innocence. A love forged in fire. And a forever that started with 2 words. Marry me. The end. And there you have it. A love story that started with a child's innocent proposal and became a forever family forged in fire and devotion. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more incredible tales of unexpected love and unbreakable families. Drop a comment below telling us your favorite moment, and share this with someone who believes in second chances and love that defends fiercely. What would you have done if an injured child asked you to marry him? Let us know. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes forever begins with the most impossible promise. See you in the next story.